Those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. This is Success with Srini.
Today's podcast episode is an extension to yesterday's podcast episode. I'm actually recording both yesterday's and today's podcast at the same time, back to back. And this is coming out to you a day later for me. So yesterday I was recording the factors that in a way influence our fulfillment. Life is a happiness game. I was making a point and I shared 7 specific factors. I said habits, I said attributes, whatever way you want to say it. But then towards the end I got this thought. I said, people have asked me before to speak on some roadblocks to success. And I've done that too also here on the radio shows, also on the podcast here. Then I said, okay, why not talk about the roadblocks to success? There are many, and it's very difficult to singularly call out one or two and kind of highlight. But again, depending on the topic of the day, sometimes wherever my focus is, wherever the discussion is, I may highlight one or two things and specifically talk about them. But then there's so many, it's very difficult. But what I've seen, just working with my own self on my own issues, there are 4 things that are very dominant in our culture in the times that we are in. And I named them as FLIG. So F-L-I-G, the 4 words. So the first letter F stands for fear. The second is limitation. I stands for inferiority. And G stands for greed. So let's get into this. I'll tell you why these 4, as I said, this is very dominant, predominantly seen in many people. The first and the foremost is fear. Fear is everywhere. We are controlled by others. Fear being used to control others. Due to lack of information, due to lack of knowledge, the way we were raised, our upbringing, so many things have played into the kind of fears we have within ourselves. Growing up, I was raised with this fear for snakes, and I continued all my life. And here I am. I work with people in hypnosis trying to remove fears. So I exactly know how it works. And fear becomes the single biggest roadblock to any kind of success that you are seeking. So anything, and there are 2 affirmations or 2 different metaphors or 2 different analogies I've used consistently while working with people. The first one being that fear always creates some level of anxiety. And if you're not feeling anxious about something, that means then you will never have a desire to explore what it is. And if you explore something, the chances are you will gain some knowledge, if nothing else. So that is why, I don't know who said this, but whoever said this said it so right. Anxiety is the storehouse of wisdom. So if you're anxious, that means if you have some fear and you get anxious about it, you will do some homework, you will do some research, and along the way you'll get some knowledge and you will increase your wisdom. Very simple. So every time you encounter some fear, just go through the sequence in your mind. The second one is anything and everything that you want is on the other side of fear. So there is no point to be fearful of anything. And there are different other affirmations that I've used, which is our time is limited. We can only do certain amount of things in a certain amount of time, and everything is timed in life anyway. We have a short life, so it makes sense to take our chances and see, what best we can do and what else can happen with us. If you're not taking risks, by not taking a risk, you are taking a risk anyway. By avoiding a fear, you may feel good, you may become comfortable momentarily, but then just you understand that there is risk everywhere. And I've met people who told me that they're fearful of speaking in public. I've met people who tell me that they're fearful of flying. I've met people who have told me that they fear life and all that. So all that is just a state of mind. And as long as you educate yourself, as long as you focus on the brighter side, you should be able to overcome this. Okay, so let's get to the second one. The second is a limitation. A limitation is the biggest roadblock to success. Second biggest roadblock to success. And there are so many elements when we talk about limitations. Many of them. But then the one that I really want to highlight today is the limitation that we put on ourselves by making some assumptions about who we are, what we have, what we do not have. And that's called a self-imposed limitation. A limitation by definition is a hindrance. It's an obstacle that we create. Sometimes it's by nature, by default we have them. That's not the discussion we are having here. But self-imposed limitations are those that are made out of assumptions. They're not true, they don't exist, and we somehow have made up our mind about them. And here is the crux of this. Majority of the times we make assumptions just for the fact that we have gotten that as a habit. So we are so habitual with making assumptions. We never invest time to understand, collect the data, do the research, put in some hypotheses, consider some alternate hypotheses, and get some other opinions, some other points of view. We don't. And we override them with our own emotions, our own feelings, and just we exist in that cloudy state where we really do not know what is right, what is real, what is not real. So things like I have no education, I have no money, I have no connections, I have no energy, I have no ability to focus. All these are self-imposed. All these things have to be tested before they can be accepted that way. So if you feel you don't have money, you really, really have to get some data, get some proof that you don't have money. There's a difference between lack of a resource and lack of a resourcefulness. So, you could lack a resource truly, but it doesn't mean that you are not resourceful. So, self-imposed limitations, they don't take a lot of effort to understand, to explore, and really go deep. It doesn't cost a lot, and there's no better person to do this other than you yourself when you're dealing with your own issues. So, second biggest roadblock. And the third one is inferiority complex. And when we talk about the topic inferiority complex, the society does a lot of this. And it's also programming again, the way we were raised, the way we were told and shown or implied. All that plays a role in the development of this mindset. There are many approaches to overcome this, and the most effective way to overcome inferiority complex is practicing self-acceptance. You accept yourself, and you don't judge yourself. You don't penalize yourself or crucify yourself. I don't know the right word to say that, but you don't hurt yourself, not physically, but you don't really constantly keep on attacking yourself for things that otherwise may not be true. So there's so many different strategies when it comes to self-acceptance, how to practice them and all that. So I'll probably get into that later on, but you get the idea. And the last one is greed. Greed is also, there is now data to show that greed, somehow it takes some brain space in a very weird way. And they are now saying it's in the DNA. It's weird. Everything over a long period of time becomes DNA. So if you want to get rid of greed, then there are many different approaches you can take, but the most effective way to get rid of greed is by giving and by sharing. There are different shapes and forms of this and different ways this can manifest, but every time you hear the word greed, it's related to money, mostly money. But there are other forms of greed also. And the only way to really overcome this is by giving and by sharing. Now, the reason why I said flig and the way I arranged this 4 words is because if I go in that order, fear is the most easiest one to overcome. Whether you take external help or you internally do it, fear is the easiest way. And even though it occupies the mind in a big way, it's also very easy to take it out. And that's also I'm making that statement based on my personal experience working with people who are going through some phobias, some fears and all. The second in that series is limitation. Limitations can be easily removed, followed by inferiority. Very easily. A little bit harder, but much easier to remove than greed. So the greed is the hardest part, the most difficult thing to remove. And that is something that really you need to really build multiple mechanisms because with greed you look at the world with a different view altogether. It completely changes the way you engage with everything around you. It has its presence at multiple different levels and much deeper than what we know. So if I have to deal with greed, then I have to have multiple different coping mechanisms. So these 4 are the roadblocks to success, whatever success that you are pursuing right now. That's all for now. Hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully I made you think through this. That was the idea. But then I'll come back and do specific podcast episodes talking about each one of them. Multiple times I've spoken about fear. The other things, limitations, inferiority complex and greed, I may do individual podcast episodes going a little bit deeper into it. So stay tuned for that. And that's all for now. Wherever you are, be safe, and I'll be talking to you as early as tomorrow. Thank you.